everyone. This is Michelle with Quest, and welcome to Quest Experience Week. Today is Cloud Day, and our session today is Oracle Cloud Lessons Learned, Financial Transformation with Samantha Giuliano. A few housekeeping notes to go over before we get started. All attendee lines are in mute and will stay in mute throughout this session. If you have any questions, please place them into the question drop box located on your GoToWebinar panel, and we will answer those at the end of the session. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Quest Content Library. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Megan, who'll provide a brief introduction and will kick things off for us. Megan?
Thank you. All right. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody out there. I hope you're enjoying today. I'm hoping you're enjoying Cloud Apps Day as well. We have Samantha Giuliano from Denovo here today. She's going to be discussing some of the Oracle Cloud lessons learned that she's had, specifically towards financial transformation. So Samantha, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. And thanks everyone for joining today. I hope you're having a great holiday season so far. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So in the agenda today, we're talking about, a successful financial transformation and how we can go about that and knowing how to overcome when we run into those obstacles that we've seen from lessons learned in the past. It's not necessarily how to, how to know what lessons are learned, but how to overcome them and know those key concepts and resolve and drill down to those downfalls that come into the transformation. In the agenda today, we're going to talk about lessons learned. What can we do now? So what can you guys do now in order to start to prepare yourself for the transformation? And change management's ever-changing role that we have within the cloud and the cloud journey, how it's evolved over time. We're just as your phone doesn't have the same apps as it had a year ago or a month ago or 2 years ago, the cloud journey itself has evolved quickly since its beginning and inception on release 8. And most importantly also, what are some of those success factors? Now, each of these will go ahead and play their own role, and there'll be common themes going through the presentation. So my name is Samantha Giuliano. I'm the Senior Practice Director here at Denovo. I'm 25 plus years in the Oracle realm. I actually started on the EBS side, and I have over 23 cloud implementations or transformations. It seems like a high number, but that's because back on release 8, which is when I started, so 2013 roughly, 2012, and on release 8, it came out with just financials, and we'll talk again about the cloud journey. But we were doing implementations very quickly, 8 weeks, then 3 months, then 4 months, and so forth. Of the implementations that I've been involved in, 90% have been on time, on or under budget. So there's a lot to be said of lessons learned and how we've incorporated them. And of course, if you want to reach us, we're here at denovo-us.com. So I'll go ahead and get started. So some key success stories for successful transformation. So think about your company and what's right for your company. And it's not a one size fits all. So sometimes people come and say, okay, well, how is the financial transformation going to happen? Is it we're all in, it's everything within ERP, it's everything within HCM, it's both, or what does a transformation really look like? And transformations can be your whole ERP, it can be ERP SCM, it can be HCM ERP, it can also maybe just be an add-on or an edge product, like if you're on JD Edwards or EBS or a legacy system, you can maybe just add in, say, EPM, Enterprise Performance Management, or I used to be a CPA, so we might call it CPM, which is Corporate Performance Management. So think of your planning and budgeting. Maybe you just add that on. So a transformation can be of any size. It's not necessarily and all or none. In looking at that, consider your customizations and manual workarounds prior to the implementation. So you want to look and say, all right, of what we have or what we want to go ahead and expand on or transform within our business. What does that, how many customizations do I have in there? I mean, we've been on projects where it's been a bit of, we started with, say, finance, because there were less customizations there. And we've branched out then into SEM, where you can have a lot of customizations, say, within warehouse management. So, look at those and see where your company is fitting right now. Another success factor for transformations is considering the maturity of integrations that are happening now within Oracle Integration Cloud, or what you'll hear me say is OIC. And when we first started the journey into the cloud back on release 8, there was always this perception that, oh, well, if we go with cloud, we can't integrate with anything, or how do we touch with our, say you have a payroll system like an ADP or Paychex or something. How do I integrate with that? Is it just an extraction and an upload, or can I have real-time integrations? And OIC has come a long way. And I think it's been $6 billion in R&D from Oracle last year alone, and maturing the integration. So don't let the integrations fool you. Make sure that you understand what integrations you have, but know that the cloud is leveraging a lot of great technology out there. And don't forget, there's so much at your fingertips. Just as, sometimes everything's in an app now, right? I often wonder, what do we do that's not in an app? But also within the cloud journey, you can have information right at your fingertips. Oracle.com, docs.oracle.com. We have the community portal. So there's a lot of great information out there to go ahead and get started with knowing prior to when your implementation starts. So we'll kick it off with what some of the main lessons learned that we have. And I like to focus on 6 real good areas. And we're going to talk about each of these areas in more detail throughout the presentation. But the 6 areas I like to focus on are modern best practices. You'll hear that phrase so much. And quality assurance is another area where we have some lessons learned, along with data conversion and governance and change management training. And then also how the apps are designed and built out, configured now, and how that can be a lesson learned, but it also can be a success factor. So let's start with our modern best practices. And so in each of these slides, you're going to see in the upper right corner, what has been some feedback or lessons learned, and then how you guys can overcome them, and think about how you can prepare your company to overcome them prior to the project starting. So, sometimes we'll hear at the end of a project, we have unique processes. We needed more time to review the best practices as compared to the gaps that we had. And, you also had, you would have preferred having the list of processes prior to the project starting. And when I say that, what I mean is at the end user level, if we can provide them with, here are the processes that are seated within the system, because, we all know cloud is cloud, right? And we hear best practices. We should have a list of those. I should be able to go out and say, hey, what are the best practices for GL, AR, PFA? And I should come back to you and say, oh, by the way, I've got 49 GL scripts and here's what they are. And it's not the first rodeo for a lot of folks, and expect more during your sales cycle. So when I'm working on a pre-sale cycle, I'll make sure to get that information out to the group and hopefully they'll pass it down to their end users. But a lesson learned is it would have been nice to have had that list for the folks that will be actually using the system. So, those are some of the lessons learned. How we can overcome those is think about your 80-20 rule. You'll hear that a lot. I think it's more 85-15, but think of your 80-20 rule. So look at what do your users do now that is, basically 80% of what the company does is handled within the system. But 20% of what the company does leverages 80% of the end user's time because they're doing manual workarounds. So think of the 80-20 rule and go and ask your end user group, hey, can you let me know what all your manual processes are? Can you give me a list of activities that you're doing that you have to do workarounds or you have to store the information elsewhere for? Go ahead and ask them to make sure that we're able to jump ahead and focus on that 20% that, say, doesn't fit perfectly within the cloud out-of-box best practices that we have to be creative with. And always know that, no system's going to fix everything. So be prepared that there'll still be some of that 20% out there. Review the current processes and make sure that they're documented. Everybody says it. Everybody sits there and shakes their head and says, oh no, we have it. But then when you go to ask for it, it becomes outdated. So just double check that, make sure it's incorporative of your 80-20 rule that we just talked about. And it's available for, the system integrator to have when the project starts. The sooner you get ahead of that, the better off you're going to be. And having that information is how you can kind of also overcome. And this all goes to methodology and how the project is rolled out. Think about, maybe you do have an internal SOP. Review it, or maybe you have a QA group. They most likely have, or hopefully have, all of those business processes documented for the audit team and stuff. So double check with them. And depending on the size of your company, you might not have access to an SOP. You might not have a QA group. And that's okay too. But chances are that your business leads or your end users or super users or power users most likely have a list of everything that they do manually because they had to have figured it out and documented it at one point. So check with them and see if you can get your hands on that and have it available for the project when it starts. And obviously, and most important, is always that's going to be support from your executive team to make sure that they're supporting the project and these initiatives or asks that you have of the user group. Another lesson learned is, quality assurance. And what we sometimes hear at the project or have heard in the past is, some folks didn't see the benefit of using during the project as within, say, the statement of work of, where quality assurance would necessarily fit in, or they didn't necessarily have an anonymous survey or an anonymous way to get feedback into the project. And also there was a lack of documentation and, where that is and how that's going to be delivered and accessible to the project team. And they did not understand where or how quality assurance is necessarily documented. Now, those seem pretty similar, but what we want to do to overcome them is when you're going through and you're in the sales cycle and you're talking through the sales team and you've got the delivery team in there, and just go ahead and ask them for their document samples or how they have leveraged quality assurance or some sample questions that they might have had. Don't be shy. If this isn't their first rodeo, and it shouldn't be because there's a lot of them out there, but, ask for that. And they should be able to provide that during the sales cycle so you can see what it would look like. And again, methodology is a differentiator when it comes to the cloud, and we'll talk about it later. But that's where you want to make sure that that people aspect or your team aspect is in alignment with your system integrator. Also, internally, you can identify the key stakeholders of the project. Now, everyone will go and say, oh, well, the key stakeholders, that's the executive team, or that's the management team. But sometimes those key stakeholders, those are your power users. Because if you think about quality assurance and a successful implementation, it's how it ends up being on user adaptation. So maybe a key stakeholder is more than the executive team or more than the management team. So consider that when you're going through and you're looking at how to overcome the quality assurance concept within a transformation. And my favorites, one of my favorites is data conversion. Yes, I put read the fine print. Feels like everything out there is read the fine print lately. But some of the lessons learned that come from any successful implementation is going to be data conversion. And it's going to be, oh, I didn't realize how much time it would actually take to extract the data from the system. Or I didn't understand how much effort it would take to confirm the cleanliness of the data. Initially, when the resource assignments are given through the sales cycle, you should ask for, what percent of time do you need from these roles and responsibilities from your company? How much time do you need for these? And let's make sure we have them available. Now, if you think about that, you put a percentage out there, your SI or your integrator, or, implementer should be able to provide that back. What happens is that can go kind of just not looked at intensely, but you should see and really consider the amount of time that is going to be asked of you for data conversion. It should be more like a 90-10 split on the responsibility would be on the customer side of the house. So, really look at that percent and what's assigned and make sure you have the right people. Now, when I'm saying have the right people, if you look at data conversion or data itself, cleanliness, right? You want to deduplicate things. That can be technical and functional, right? Depending on the size of your organization, you could have a person doing the data extraction. So who knows the database best, or who has the SQL script or the report or whatever it is, that's going to put the data in a format that can be reviewed. And then who should be the reviewer? They could be two different people. So don't feel like you're pigeonholed into saying, oh, it's just one person. Data conversion should be a couple people, because you want to make sure there's an approval process or a guidance and cadence prior to the project starting. So for example, a technical person or multiple technical people, depending on the size, would be extracting, say, customer data. Another group could extract the item master. They should be handing it over to the functional team, because you want the functional team to own the data and be responsible for the cleanliness of it, because those are the transactions they're going to be investigating. So make sure that you assign a functional person that looks over the data, and maybe there's an approval process. You can put all of that in place, and you can start all of that prior to the project. You could even start a mini project just to do an initial cleansing, note the date that you did it. So anything that gets updated or created after that date, you have to relook at. So it's a smaller pool of information. How to overcome this? Start now. And also, assign a resource and empower them. Make sure that they are accountable for the tasks they're going to be assigned, and making sure that data has been reviewed. And so if you have the opportunity to do a transformation, back in my CPA days, I would always hear my CFO say, junk in, junk out. Now, if you're doing a transformation, you have that opportunity to start clean. And you want to not just leverage that with the system processes or the system you're implementing, but with your own data. So, make sure that you guys can put this in place. You can put it in place now. You can start these tasks now. Empower whatever resource you have assigned, confirm they're available, and that the people that they're going to be asking to have feedback in this area are going to be available. And go ahead and get that started. And if there's any conflicting priorities, let's have management step in and make sure that we get that to the top and it's not something that's pushed off. Governance. A little bit like we alluded to prior, because a lot of these do somewhat overlap. What we alluded to prior was, what is the true commitment? Like, is this really going to be 50% of my time during design? Maybe it's 70%. Maybe it's 40%, depending on your role. But, make sure that commitment is understood. The other thing in cloud, and this is a theme that goes on and on, it is, we do move fast. We've got meetings and processes, all that stuff moves quickly. If you think of it conceptually, we used to have, back in the day on premise, we would have projects that would go 2 years or 5 years or 1 year, okay, that are all being done in 3 months or 6 months or 18 months. So a 5-year project is now 18 months. So things do move quickly. And what happens with that is there's, this bit of pressure. And I don't think folks sometimes really can, digest how that moves. So again, within the cycle, just look at your PMO office, or maybe based on the size of your company, you don't have a PMO office. That is okay. Not every company has a PMO office. Not everyone has the ability to have a specific PMO, already assigned. But talk to your SI as you're, going through the process and everything. Talk about that. Talk about, how the PMO or the governance of the PMO is aligned with the persona of your project or the persona of your business, and better understand all of that. One of the things that we've done on governance is you will typically see things like a steering committee, a PMO office, and a project team. And that's the hierarchy of moving things and escalating them up and through the ranks to get everything completed. Now, if you think about it, what about another layer? So more than just the executive team, or more than just the PMO team, what about a team that's just the management team or an advisory team layer? They could be in there. And it's kind of like your power users. So as risks or actions come to the project, instead of just going straight up to the PMO office, because I would, question yourselves, right? How much of the PMO and the executive team actually get their hands on the system? Why don't we put a layer in there? So it's not what you typically see, but what we do is we put a layer in there, and I found it very successful, where issues or risks go through a layer of like the power users or super user level. And some of it is even, you could have, a manager of a department or a supervisor of a department. Who knows the processes best? Put them on that advisory team and have an extra layer within there. You'll find a lot of stuff can get resolved within itself. On Also, socialize the pace of a cloud project prior to the project start. Everyone is really looking for, oh, what used to take 5 years is now 18 months. Everyone's super excited. Why? Because at the bottom line, it's a less number. Yay. But socialize that pace. Socialize, okay, guys, if it used to take 5 years, let's think about this. We're going to be moving faster. So, make sure that people are prepared, make sure they're available. And again, make sure they double check that resource requirement that your SI will be providing them. Also support the decision timelines and empower those team members. By that, you have to allow and you have to accept that you're entrusting authority within that project team. And so support them. If they're making decisions to get things done, empower them, embrace them, that change management concept, and move them through the system. Oh, efficient design and build. So with cloud, obviously, you can't, the definition of insanity, we cannot do the same thing and expect a different result. So we can't take a 5-year project, make it a 1.5 years, and do things the same way and expect it all work out. Well, some of the things that we can do in the cloud on efficient design and build, we can overcome these lessons learned, which would be clients would say, we didn't have enough time to review the requirement documentation, or as we all know, documentation gets outdated. I would do a raise of hands, but I'm going to secretly know that everyone is raising their hand right now when they say, chances are your documentation maybe hasn't been updated unless you just went through an audit. But that's because things change, processes change, people change, the system gets updated. So, as fast as we're moving and the way that we can design and build the applications or configure the applications, there's some ways in FSM, which is Functional Setup Manager. So in FSM, Functional Setup Manager in the cloud, you actually can create little folders, and you can put notes on the exact implementation task you're doing or changing. Now, if you think about this, consider like having a document that you put on the network. Once the document's on the network, if you go to that one document, because you're going to have to go there anyway to update it, then everyone gets to see that update and everyone has access to it. Kind of that same concept in Functional Setup Manager if you leverage folders or implementation packages, okay? Now, they'll say, oh, what about rapid implementation and everything? Those are good, but you can also put those tasks into a folder and you can overcome those on-the-fly configurations, or, oh, I just changed that because you had created implementation folders, meaning in order to change that config, you navigated, or everyone navigates, to the same location, which means you have the ability to put a note there on what you changed. Now, if you don't do that and you have a document, you have to do 2 things instead of 1. So, consider that. Because of the pace, sometimes people felt pressured into signing off, and they didn't necessarily ask, what can't be changed. Now, the good thing with cloud is we can still change some stuff, more so than we used to. And so ask, like during the cycle, ask, okay, what configs do we do now that we just can't change? And the word can't, all right? Be particular about that. It can be changed, chances are, takes effort. But ask what can't be changed. Things that are foundational in your enterprise structure. They can technically be changed because we can just do, a refresh. But, your chart structure, your calendars, things like that. Or what can't be changed after transactions start hitting the system. So ask yourself, or ask the SI those things. So or you can get a comfort level of, hey, I might have felt pressured, or maybe I didn't get a chance to really examine some of that configuration documentation, but what can't be changed of where we're going? And that, if we're able to do those implementation packages, which is a little out of the box thinking when it comes to methodology, we had to use them, back in the day on release dates. But we still use them today. And it's because we're able to keep a consistency on why a config was changed, who changed it, when they changed it. Think of it like an audit trail. So, if you leverage the system or something within the system, then your documentation won't be so outdated, and it'll be available for review and audit right within the system and the environment that you need it to be. And change management. So when training is also very important. Change management becomes more important in the cloud, but some lessons learned are understanding the difference, or how organizational change management, or OCM, you'll see referenced in the document. Sometimes people don't feel it was represented. A lot of the times they felt it was so bundled with training, didn't necessarily get the concept of OCM. The other one was understanding, like, where is this training documentation stored, or where are documents stored in general, and how do we access them? And then user adaptation is going to be a major play in the success of your transformation. No matter how smooth the project team works together, if the end users across your organization don't embrace it, understand it, are able to move with it, then the project, really didn't do its job in passing down and doing that knowledge transfer. So making sure the training content and access to training, or understanding or help is adequately available is very important. And sometimes what will happen is, kind of a play off of the modern best practices, is in order to make these timelines, there is a percentage of work that can be passed off to the customer. So just make sure to read the document there on exactly what's expected from a training perspective and updating training documents. And you can also overcome some of the change management, because ask about who the change management person is, and what their qualifications are and how it's different from training. It should be two different people. A change management or organizational change management person looks at personas. They look at psyche. They look at the psychology of the business and how the change is going to affect people. Okay, and people are really what's going to make your transformation very successful. So understand how the change management within the methodology of the implementation partner plays within your project. The other thing we see, and we've seen for years, is the train the trainer. So ask yourself, think about your company right now. How would train the trainer really work for your organization? Are the train the trainers, are the trainers really good educators? How do the trainers perform in a presentation or in assisting people? Not everyone is cut out. Admire teachers tremendously. Not everyone is cut out for that. But it's a very important role when it comes to the financial transformation. There are, like at Denovo, we've got, I have a structure that's slightly different. I've actually hired ex-teachers in order to perform the training, that have an understanding of business and are there from the project from the beginning. When this started back in Release 8, the concept of doing that, I was one of the first 30 to go live here in the States on financials. But, how does that really work? And, in the cloud, we're more functional than we are technical. So It actually worked very well. And having someone who understood the comprehension of training, how to assess a group, how to understand the competency of the lesson, quote, or the process, and how it's done in the new system, they can read the room very well. So think about how your trainers would do in training others, and then just ask. And during the sales cycle, make sure you ask how that's done, or what are your other options. And there are other options. There's options within the SI. There's also options out there with training in general. So companies that just do training. If you want to know some of those, let me know. But they just do training and they're great. Again, some of the key areas or lessons learned are going to be the modern best practices, the quality assurance, data conversion, governance, how is the system built out, and change management and training. Now, these concepts carry through the rest of the presentation. Not only are they lessons learned, but they can be key success factors. And that's what you want to look for. As we talk about, those were the lessons learned. So what do I do now? And some of these items we've touched on, but there's 5 big ones that I like to keep talking about. And at the end of the day, repetition is the first of all learning. If you walk away from nothing but the end of the day, from me, you'll know data cleansing, you'll know change management and training, and the delivery methodology is all extremely important for successful financial transformation. Again, system readiness. So data conversion cleansing, the data governance, you can document your integrations, and don't forget about your security. So your roles and responsibility matrix. No matter if you're doing a full transformation or if you're just doing, like, you're an existing JD Edwards or e-business and you're saying, okay, wait, I just want to use maybe some edge products like EPM. And I pick on EPM a lot again because I was a CPA. But maybe I just want to add them in, but you're still going to have to go through security rules. So you have to have it out there. Think about, do you have single sign-on? Think about, depending on the size of your business, what are your compliance issues? Do you have SOX, and HR? Think about everything that comes from that. So, consider that. Foundational readiness. So you can go ahead and start business process reviews. Know that regardless of what you're doing, whether you're doing a full transformation or whether you're just doing a bolt-on or an edge product, think about your org structures, because they're going to need to know that, like, what are your legal entities, what's your GL structure, where you guys located, or if it's HCM, like, what are your jobs, or what's the compensation, or what's the approval workflows. So you're going to need all of that information during the project, the stuff you can find out now from within your company. Project readiness, really consider those project resources. I haven't touched on this yet, but it is important. So we actually, there's a client that they hired some temps to come in to backfill or bubble. Sometimes people will say bubble fill, but backfill or say do the day-to-day activities and free up those key resources that will make your project successful. So if you have a supervisor, a manager, maybe just a power user that is integral to the processes within your company, then go ahead and maybe consider that. Maybe look at what would a temp cost to free them up, and go for that, empower that to have them within those departments. And, change management, get those communication plans going. Communication is very important, and it's even more important when you guys are starting a transformation process or going down that transformation path. And you can start making sure that there's a communication cadence happening. And again, that should fall within that change management realm, which leads us right into one of my favorite topics, organizational change management and how it's key and why it matters in a successful transformation. So the number one reason why projects fail is end user adaptation. So, people matter. They are your organization. And 95% of organizations actually achieve their business case when OCM is properly leveraged. And OCM, think about organizational change management. It's not just training. This is workshops, personas. This is communication. This is evaluations. This is constantly checking with the end user in the user groups to make sure that they're understanding and adjusting to that change. For every dollar spent on OCM, it's an approximately a 15% gain in productivity. When you're looking at your OCM side and you're looking and you're evaluating the pricing, OCM can be a work stream that tends to be a little pricier. It's worth it. Don't downplay it. People, process are the elements and foundation to a successful implementation. Everybody knows it. Everyone's like, I've heard it before, Samantha. I hear it every day, but it's for real. So, think about and consider that when you guys are evaluating where to trim dollars from. Maybe even add dollars too. OCM is very important. And, 70% of implementation failures are a result of people-related issues. So change management can help with that. So when you're looking at your escalation process or risks or decisions that need to be made within the company and how fast they need to be made in order to make your timeline, change management can step in and help out with that. They're excellent at it. On the right-hand side, I'm sure everyone has seen this, people, process, technology. People are 70% of a successful project or more, and 20% is process. Now, technology, I put that at 10%. And the reason is because you tend to see that out there, that you guys have already vetted the applications. So if you've chosen Oracle Cloud, you've already looked at and considered, does this functionality or does this technology help? And the answer is yes. But it's still at 10% because we have that 80-20 rule split. So, there's that 10% out there that it might not be there right now, but with quarterly releases, it can very well be there the next release or further. And a lot of the enhancements that Oracle does do comes from the partner community and the end user community. So in that customer portal, you're able to put in there some of your thoughts and feedback. And Oracle does look at those. And they take those into consideration when you are, when they're going through what functionality or what processes to incorporate on their future releases and our quarterly updates. Another slide just kind of empowers the whole change management drives success on user adaptation. Again, if you look, people and process are over 70% of the success and contributing to your financial transformation or your digital transformation within the company and making it successful. So it is key and element to that. Now, if we're looking at how cloud has evolved or what the cloud journey and evolution has been over time, you can easily connect this to, say, your cell phone. And I don't mean to pick on cell phones, but I would do a raise of hands for who doesn't have a cell phone, but I'm going to go with we more have them than don't. And think about how they change, right? So they're ever evolving, and they're evolving because, they have that ability to do it and push those updates out through the phone, just as cloud does. So, your front office, your back office platforms are always evolving. They're coming out and, doing both technology updates and functional updates. And if you're looking at some things to think about, so conversationally, how often is it that you just reach for your phone and you want to find an answer to a question, or you go to the Google from your phone and maybe you use the microphone and ask it something, and all of a sudden it comes up with an answer. So Oracle Cloud has a similar concept. They have an excellent help features that links out to videos or how-tos. In addition, consider your learning library that you created during the implementation, but make sure it gets updated. Or if you used a third party, they should be updating that documentation for you. So consider all of that, but that kind of concept is embedded within the cloud applications. Mobile, it obviously has evolved a lot. Everyone can sit back and go, okay, where was I a year ago? Where was I a year and a half ago? Were we brick and mortar? Were we working from home? Chances are, it used to be going into an office, and then, a year and a half ago, all of a sudden it was, I'm working from my kitchen table, to I better find a different spot in my house. And all of a sudden you need a more internet bandwidth. So in the cloud, it has evolved with the market and with demands and people and technology. It's evolved over time. And it will continue to do so because, staying connected and everything is so important. I mean, look at your phone, look at everything on how everyone is interly connected. And then security really comes into play with this connectivity. And with Oracle Cloud, you have that bonus of having that additional security layer. So as you're looking at your financial transformation, or why should we do a financial transformation or digital transformation, look at things like we just talked about here, which is the integrated, RPAs, the mobile accessibility, how to stay connected. And like I had alluded to earlier, don't let infrastructure shy you away. The OIC, or Oracle Integration Cloud, it really can extend that application, and it has some amazing things. I could do a whole conversation or two on OIC and how it's evolved. We were actually privileged to be in the beginning of when OIC came out, in some training in Reston, and we got the opportunity to see it from the beginning to now, and it's just amazing how the infrastructure is just keeping up with technology and security. The continuous automation. Now, I think the easiest way to think about the future enterprise automation is to describe it as an evolution of technology, or like the do, think, learn, right? Why would I do a transformation, or what's going to make a transformation successful? Look and leverage this do, think, learn, and understand where you fit on the spectrum now and where you want to fit on the spectrum going forward, right? So, simply put, I mean, automation is being introduced to the marketplace in general, and now the workforce and back office look at these things on your horizons, like systems that do, systems that think, and learn. And today, your organizations or companies are investing significantly in time and effort into understanding and applying the systems that do. But such as the robotic process automation, or RPA, and bots, we've all got them. If you don't think you've got them, just open your bank app and ask it a question, and it'll be right there for you. But the real excitement and potentially huge productivity gains are around what's coming next for these systems to think, what's coming for these systems to learn. So though we're talking about success factors for a successful financial transformation, don't forget why we're doing it. So, these were just a few slides on why we would be doing that financial transformation, or reasons to look at or consider. Where are we today? Are your systems in the do phase and you want to get them to the think phase or the learn phase? So, those are some things to leverage. And the new delivery model. This has been talked about throughout the project, or throughout the presentation, sorry. And so I'm not going to get into it too much. But I think everyone is on the same page with Oracle Cloud Apps. I mean, it's modern best practices. I can give you a list. I have 900 scripts literally sitting in an Excel sheet. I can let you know what they are. Everyone's got them. But what makes a project successful? It's not necessarily the technology. We talked about that earlier, right? 10%. It's the people. It's the processes. And it's 70% people. What are people? People are methodologies. People are delivery models. People are project teams. So if you're looking for a successful transformation, look at the personas that are in alignment with your business, with your company, and with your project team. But also, will that system integrator, how do they fit in? How does their construct, their governance, their people fit in with your company and your company's persona? People are the differentiator. That is what will make a successful transformation. And because of cloud, we have the ability to set a baseline on functionality. So your differentiators are on the delivery, and it can be done. I always would get how do you do it? And I'm like, well, it's also ever evolving. Not two companies are the same. So why should methodology be the same for every company? Think about that one and ponder it. But ask an SI how they handle the different companies, the different personas. Their methodology needs to be agile with what's being delivered, with what departments are there, with who the people are. It's not a one size fits all. And so methodology should be flexible. Some final success factors. Again, we talked about these next couple of slides quite a bit throughout the presentation. So don't downplay pre-planning. So important. We talked about the data strategy, the cleansing. When you're going through modern best practices, so number 3 and number 5, which is change management. When you're going through what's going to be a success factor for the deployment, think about not necessarily, well, this is how I've always done it, but say, why won't it work? This happens all the time. Google the monkey change management video. It's actually pretty good. But look at why it won't work. Instead of saying, oh, well, here's what you do and let's fit that in. I mean, you didn't just buy a shiny new car and then run an 8-track tape player. Or I have people on the phone that go, I don't know what an 8-track tape player is. Yes, just dated myself there. But, then ask yourselves, what's being brought up in the meeting? The questions are, why won't it work? Not, well, this is how we've always done it. So challenge yourselves there, get your integrations going, consider those requirements, and also know that, infrastructure it's again, over $6 billion investment that Oracle's been doing. It's amazing, some of the stuff that's happening in OIC. And identify those rules and security. Make sure you've got that clear roadmap. Your buy-in is good. People make the transformation successful. So, hey, the people that are going to be delivering, like say if it were Denovo or the SI or whomever you choose, right, that are delivering the project, they're also functional. So they're going to work best off of use cases. So maybe consider getting some of those use cases up and running and ready. And make sure, you got your go live cadence, and this presentation will be available for those who want to download it. And don't not expect a spike in your workload. So we talked about the bubble staff, or those, maybe hiring temps or something. Consider that because you're going to pay now or pay later. I would pay for the day-to-day activities to be taken on and allow for the folks that used to do those, that are key and integral to your processes, be part of the project. And as you're looking at those success factors, everything that we've really been talking about, the executive buy-in, the urgency, right? And how we need to have proactive communication, change management, and be aware of what's being implemented, those processes and modern best practices. So keep all of those in mind. And what's next? You can schedule a cloud assessment you can schedule it with us, Denovo-us.com. And also do some of your own due diligence and your own work on your own. Everything's at your fingertips. Cloud.oracle.com, docs.oracle.com, Google, YouTube, all are good ways and places to go. I want to thank everyone for taking time to listen today. Samantha Giuliano, you can reach me anytime you'd like. It's hyphenated email, so I apologize for that. But you can always reach out and contact us. And then I will go ahead and hand this back. Megan, do you want this back? Do we want to open it for questions?
Yep, so let's open it up for questions. So just a quick reminder, you can add any questions you may have into the chat window, and we'll be sure to try and get to them. We do have a couple that have come in. First one, what are the latest trends on why companies are going through transformation?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot of the reasons why companies are going through transformation right now are going to be getting out of it, leveraging RPA, going IoT, making sure that we are moving forward with not only the technology that's available and getting updated regularly, but making sure that we have it accessible to our users and our teams. So that's probably one of the larger trends. The mobile accessibility would be another one. Think about how we have the hybrid model or the hoteling nowadays instead of brick and mortar. Things need to be available on mobile devices, reports, expense reports, or viewing activities or functionality. All are mobile apps now. But great question. Any other questions?
Yep, another one that came in. What are some of the latest features you see customers leveraging in cloud?
Oh, yes. I'm going to say mobile. Mobile is a big one. And the reporting and the analytics, what happens to be happening right now within the industry is predictive analytics, or being able to look at your data quickly and efficiently. The EPM modules of the Enterprise Edition handle that very well. And they can, cut time down to basically after the close, you're able to produce all of those management packets and board reports or any SEC reporting.
All right, and then one other one real quick, since I know we are at the end of time. There have been cloud implementation durations that range from 3 months to 18 months. How is there such a difference in timing?
The difference in timing is going to be based on the footprint and the amount of users that are out there. So if we're looking, we can easily within 3 months bring up, say, and I keep picking on enterprise performance management, but we can easily bring up something like planning and budgeting within 3 months. Now, if we're looking at a transformation that's going to incorporate multi-pillars, so it's going to be SCM, ERP, HCM, and our user count's going up, then that's going to push the timelines out. All of that time, though, can seem a lot less than it has been in the past because we have all of those accessibility to the modern best practices and everything that's out there today, and our ability to keep that documentation within the system rather than having it in a hard copy.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Again, I would like to thank Samantha and everybody for attending today's session. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Samantha's phone number and email are up on the screen.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good holiday season.